In 2009, a team of engineers at Facebook made a change to the newsfeed that almost nobody noticed. Before that change, when you opened Facebook, you saw what your friends posted. In order, most recent first. After that change, you saw what Facebook decided you should see. The system was called EdgeRank, and the stated reason was practical. Too much content, not enough time. Let's filter it for relevance. That single engineering decision, made inside one company, would go on to reshape how billions of people experience human connection. Here's what makes it worth examining. It didn't make us more connected. It made us more engaged. Those two things are not the same. And for the past 15 years, we've been confusing them. Today, the average American spends more than 7 hours a day on screens. We have more platforms, more access, more tools for communication than any generation before us. And yet, 61% of Americans report feeling lonely. Gen Z, the first generation to grow up entirely inside smartphone culture, is the loneliest demographic ever measured in the United States. That pattern isn't a coincidence. It's a system producing exactly the outcome it was built to produce. To understand why, you have to look at what these platforms actually optimize for, because it was never connection. In the 1950s, behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner put pigeons in boxes with levers. When a pigeon pressed the lever, it sometimes got food. Not always. Randomly. Pigeons that got food every time they pressed the lever eventually stopped pressing. They were satisfied. Pigeons that got food, sometimes, unpredictably, pressed the lever obsessively. The uncertainty kept them coming back. This is called a variable reward schedule. It's the same psychological mechanism behind slot machines. Pull the lever. Maybe nothing. Pull again. Maybe nothing. Pull again. Something. The unpredictability is the addiction, not the reward itself, but the possibility of it. When Facebook introduced EdgeRank in 2009, and when every major platform followed with algorithmic feeds between 2012 and 2016, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, they didn't just reorganize content, they introduced engineered unpredictability into your social life. Every time you open an app, you don't know what you're going to find. Maybe something forgettable. Maybe something that makes you laugh. Maybe something that makes you angry. Maybe a message from someone you haven't thought about in years. That unpredictability is why you keep coming back. Not because the content is reliably good, because your brain has been trained to anticipate the next reward. Tristan Harris, a former design ethicist at Google, put it plainly: social media is a slot machine in your pocket. That's not rhetorical. It's a behavioral description, and it's accurate. So what exactly changed when platforms went algorithmic? A chronological feed is passive infrastructure. It shows you what happened. It doesn't care whether you stay or leave. An algorithmic feed is an active behavioral system. It learns what keeps you scrolling and shows you more of that. Here's what platforms discovered quickly. The content that keeps people scrolling isn't usually content that makes them feel good. It's content that triggers emotional arousal. Outrage performs. Anxiety performs. Tribal conflict performs. Novelty performs. Nuance doesn't perform. Slow building trust doesn't perform. The post your friend wrote about their ordinary Wednesday doesn't perform. So algorithms learn to surface less of the ordinary and more of the extreme, because extreme content generates stronger engagement signals. The feed stopped reflecting social reality. It started engineering emotional response. Neuroscience research makes this concrete in a way that's worth sitting with. fMRI studies found that unpredictable social rewards, a like, a comment, a match, activate the nucleus accumbens. That's the part of the brain associated with reward anticipation. The same circuitry involved in gambling behavior. The anticipation of a social reward produces stronger neural activation than the reward itself. You're not addicted to the likes. You're addicted to the possibility of them. That's why people check their phones when they consciously know there's probably nothing there. The checking is the trained behavior. The phone is the lever. Now, social media defenders will tell you the research is complicated, and that's partially true. Not all usage is equal. Researchers consistently distinguish between two types of social media use: active use, messaging, conversation, direct interaction, collaboration; passive use, scrolling, lurking, watching, comparing. Active use shows minimal or neutral effects on well-being. Passive use is where the damage accumulates: lower life satisfaction, higher social comparison, increased loneliness, reduced perceived connection. Here's the design problem. Modern platforms are architecturally built for passive consumption. Infinite scroll has no natural stopping point. Algorithmic feeds don't require you to interact, only to stay. The like button reduces complex emotional responses to a single tap. These platforms built a machine for passive consumption and called it social media. While this was happening online, something else was disappearing offline. Sociologist Ray Oldenburg spent years writing about what he called third places. Not home, not work. The informal public spaces where communities actually form. Cafes, barbershops, parks, libraries. The local bar where people ended up talking to strangers. These spaces were never glamorous, but they were where low-stakes, unstructured human interaction happened. Where people built what sociologists call weak ties, the broad, loose network of acquaintances that actually connects social worlds and expands possibility. Between 2010 and 2025, these spaces declined. Malls closed, community organizations shed members, remote work eroded workplace socialization. Urban design increasingly optimized for transaction rather than congregation. At the exact moment offline social infrastructure was collapsing, platforms offered a digital substitute. And people took it. Of course they did. But researchers kept finding an important distinction. Digital communities provide connection. They don't always provide belonging. Online spaces frequently lack physical presence, embodied ritual, and the spontaneous friction that turns acquaintance into genuine relationship. What people got instead was what sociologists now call ambient sociality. Constant, low-level connection with no deep relational grounding. Dating apps made this dynamic unusually visible. Before apps, romance was embedded in social context, geography, shared environments, repeated accidental exposure. Compatibility emerged gradually through interaction over time. Dating apps restructured courtship into a filtering system. Tinder's early algorithm assigned hidden desirability scores, borrowed from chess rankings, based on who swiped on you, who you swiped on, and match reciprocity. Users were being invisibly sorted into tiers. The consequences were predictable. People began optimizing, testing photos, engineering bios, studying swipe behavior to maximize match rates. And the abundance of options didn't produce satisfaction. It produced what behavioral researchers call the paradox of choice, the persistent sense that someone slightly better might be one swipe away. Commitment thresholds dropped. Patience for gradual connection eroded. Ghosting became standard behavior rather than exception. The platform successfully maximized engagement while users remained romantically dissatisfied. For the platform, those two things were never in conflict. Perpetual searching is economically advantageous. The moment you feel satisfied, you stop using the app. That logic isn't specific to dating platforms. It's the underlying structure of the entire industry. To be fair, this isn't the whole story. Before recommendation systems, human relationships were constrained by geography. Your potential community was largely whoever happened to live near you. For people with rare illnesses, marginalized identities, or niche experiences, local community often didn't exist at all. Algorithms changed that. Someone with a rare autoimmune disease could find thousands of people globally who understood their experience. LGBTQ+ youth in isolated regions could, for the first time, find others like themselves before even leaving their hometown. Hyper-specific interest communities formed around things that would never have reached critical mass locally. For these people, algorithmic discovery wasn't social erosion, it was social survival. That counter-argument is real and shouldn't be dismissed. But it coexists with a structural shift the research consistently describes. Algorithms weakened local cohesion, embodied community, and shared social experience, while strengthening affinity-based micro-belonging. We got better at finding our people anywhere on Earth. We got worse at belonging to a shared world together. Whether that trade-off was worth it is a real question. But it is a trade-off, and we've rarely been asked whether we wanted it. The data makes the broader pattern hard to ignore. The Cigna Loneliness Index found that in 2018, roughly 54% of Americans reported feeling lonely. By 2019, that had risen to 61%. And across every major measurement, the same counterintuitive pattern appeared. Younger people, the most digitally connected demographic, consistently reported the highest loneliness levels. Generation Z outranked every other age group for social isolation. Heavy social media users were approximately twice as likely to report high loneliness compared to light users. People surrounded by constant digital interaction reported feeling emotionally unseen. The system was producing a specific and repeatable experience. You're always around people, but you don't belong anywhere. Here's the thesis stated plainly. These platforms were not designed to make you feel connected. They were designed to maximize the time you spend on them. Connection and engagement are not the same thing. They've never been the same thing. But the industry spent 15 years treating them as equivalent, and most of us went along with it because the distinction is hard to feel in the moment. What got optimized was the sensation of almost connecting, the anticipation of reward, the scroll that might, this time, produce something that matters. The loneliness epidemic isn't happening despite our digital connectivity. It's partially a consequence of what that connectivity was actually built to do. Lonely people keep searching. Searching people keep scrolling. Scrolling people keep the platform alive. There's a detail from early internet culture worth returning to. Before the algorithm era, online spaces looked different. Forums, long-form discussion threads, direct peer-to-peer interaction, communities that required participation, not just presence. People contributed to those spaces. They weren't passively consuming them. The shift from chronological to algorithmic feeds didn't just change what you see, it changed your relationship to the experience. It turned you from a participant into an audience. And audiences don't belong, they watch. The platforms built systems that produce the sensation of social life without the structure that makes it real. And we've been scrolling through that gap ever since, mistaking stimulation for connection, engagement for belonging, the lever for the reward.